Welcome to our Energy Edge webinar, E-commerce Fuel Sales, How to Make Meatloaf Out of Your Competition. This webinar is geared to take approximately 40 minutes, as we know that your time is valuable. Once we have completed, we will open it up to a short Q&A section, so please hold your questions until then, or you can simply type them in on the right side of your screen, and we will address them after the presentation. If you notice on the right side of your screen, there's a small section for chat. Just go ahead and type your questions in there, and we'll address them after the presentation. Let me begin by introducing John Vrabel. John is the founding partner and the managing partner of Energy Edge, as well as our resident expert in business development with a proven track record for building businesses that are rewarded by the marketplace. John?
Hey, thanks, Adrian, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Energy Edge webinar this morning. This is actually the last time we're doing this particular webinar, The Secrets of Online Fuel Marketers, or as we tongue-in-cheek call it, How to Make Meatloaf Out of Your Competition. And we'll talk a little bit about some of those techniques and so forth as we go through here. As Adrian mentioned, please feel free to use the chat feature in the GoToMeeting bar on the right side for any questions that you have. Oftentimes, the question and answer session is some of the more interesting and insightful parts of the webinar. So we'll certainly stay on the phone and online as long as we need to answer your questions. With that in mind, just by way of a little bit of background, we at Energy Edge, myself, Adrian, our other partners, have been involved in online e-commerce within the fuels industry for about 12 years now. So we've got quite a body of experience, in terms of how to sell fuel online. And more recently, the last couple of years, we have made a software platform that we call the Energy Engine available to fuel marketers that can actually do business online themselves. So that gives us additional information, and we're now watching some of the tools and the tactics that they're using and sharing some of the results with you during this webinar. So with that in mind, we'll go ahead and get started. First, what we want to do is set the stage, kind of give you a little bit of an idea of what's going on in terms of the world of the Internet. And as you can probably imagine, just about 100% of us here in the U.S. are online and are using the Internet. So we use it for a variety of different things. And certainly one of the things that we use the Internet for is to research. Matter of fact, Group M Search research study just this past year found that 93% of all buyers, of the people that are buying products, whether they're buying them online or they're buying them in a brick-and-mortar store, use the Internet to actually research their purchases before they buy. So the Internet certainly has become extremely, extremely useful as a place for people to find information. And that's certainly true with our business as well, in terms of downstream energy and heating oil, propane, commercial fuels, and so forth. So let's talk about who is it that's buying online. We know that everybody's online. We know that people are researching online, but who's buying? Actually, 80%, or about 8 out of every 10 Internet users, actually make purchases online as well. So we're talking about an increasing number of people that are buying online. We've seen that percentage continue to ratchet up as more people buy online, but also those of us that are buying online are also buying more online. We're spending more online. So that certainly is driving a tremendous, tremendous increase in online sales volume. And again, we're seeing that same phenomenon take place now in fuels as well. Also interesting is actually a larger percentage of online buyers actually do their research online before they make their purchase. So what that says is that, as far as your business, and most of the people on these webinars, typically are companies that are involved in the downstream energy marketplace. So it's certainly important for you to have not only a good web presence, but certainly structured in such a way that you're able to provide the answers to those online research questions that customers or prospects have in terms of your business. So let's shift our attention a little bit from the Internet as a whole to fuel dealers in particular. If we think back to last heating season, we'll remember a winter that was much warmer than typical, and part of the result of that was that we saw gallons, and here we're talking specifically about heating oil gallons because we have the largest amount of data around heating oil. We saw heating oil gallons sold during this past year plummet, largely driven by the warmer temperatures, but sales were down anywhere between 25 and 40%, depending upon what part of the region you were in. Conversely, however, during that same season, at the same time, online fuel sales were up between 12% and 100%. So again, we're seeing the same kind of thing happen in the fuel industry as has happened across the board as far as online sales, with more people shopping online and buying more things online. If we look at kind of the makeup of the heating oil and fuel dealers in particular, back when we started, I mentioned that we've been at this for about 12 years. So back in 2000 when we started, only about 12% of heating oil companies even had a website. You know, today that number is closer to about 90%. So our industry has certainly come a long way in the last 12 years as far as websites. However, today there are only about 9 to 12% of fuel marketers that can transact business online. So, you know, companies that can actually attract a customer online, have that customer register, place an order, much as they would on a site like Amazon or Target.com or any one of thousands and thousands of other sites. So there's this huge opportunity that exists in fuel today as we're just at the beginning of those dealers starting to get online. So, you know, 12 years from now when we're doing these webinars, we'll probably see that percentage of fuel marketers up at 90%, just like we see them with websites today. So that's where we are with our particular industry. Going the wrong way here, folks. So what we're going to cover today is we're going to share with you some true stories. These are you know, either actual case studies or information that we have you know, from companies that are actually using the particular tactics that we're going to talk about. Tongue-in-cheek webinar, we're actually going to call them Meatloaf tips. But it's how this new breed of online fuel marketers is using the internet and some of the tools that are available to actually outperform their competition. And we mean that you know, not only in terms of looking better than their competition, but we're talking about meaningful difference to their business as far as adding new customers, increasing their gallons and their profits using the internet. You know, while their competition, you know, most of their competition is just kind of left there wondering what the heck they're up to. The other part of the point that we'd like to make today is that the internet presents you with a very, very good opportunity to connect with your customers. By that we mean build a relationship with the customers using the capabilities of the internet. And from our experience, and this was actually a very pleasant surprise that came to us over the course of our experience, is we found that we were actually able to build a stronger relationship with our online customers than we were with our regular offline customers because of our ability to communicate with them. And you'll see some of that as we go through this webinar. But what does all that add up to? It's really how to sell more fuel. So before we jump into our Meatloaf tips, let's talk a little bit about what we're not going to cover today, just to kind of set your expectations. We're not going to talk about how to build a website or how to build an e-commerce site. Certainly we can talk with you about that, but we take that conversation offline just because it's not a topic of this particular webinar. Oftentimes search engine optimization comes up, where this webinar isn't intended for that as well, although search engine optimization is extremely critical to doing business online. Certainly it was for us when we were doing it ourselves, and it is equally critical for our clients today who use our energy engine to conduct business online. And one of the other things that comes up in the fuel business is, hey, what brand do I use if I go online to market my business? Do I use our same brand? Do I use another brand? Do I use some sort of a hybrid brand? Again, we're not going to cover that in this particular webinar, but it certainly is a topic that we do discuss at length with clients or folks that are interested in that. So feel free, if you have questions on that or anything else, drop us an email at the end of the webinar. Our contact information is there. Drop us an email, give us a call. We'd be glad to chat about any one of those things. But just wanted to set your expectations what we're going to be covering or not covering in today's webinar. So, into our Meatloaf tips. Meatloaf tip number 1, how to communicate efficiently. Email lists. Email lists, we talk about email lists in the business. We've got hundreds and hundreds of companies that we probably talked with over the last several years that said, yeah, I've got a few email addresses for my customers, but really not very many. I wish I had a lot more. How do I get them? What do I do? And so forth. And more companies now are actually gathering those email addresses from their customers. In terms of the online world, you're automatically collecting email addresses from your online customers or even your online prospects, and that presents you with a tremendous advantage because, of course, as you know, email communications today is the preferred medium to be able to get messages. We get them on our computers, on our laptops, on our iPads, on our smartphones. So we're always connected, and actually email is preferred, or electronic communications is preferred today rather than traditional forms of communications, letters, postcards, and so forth. And it also has a loyalty advantage. The consistent communications electronically can, in fact, create that loyalty advantage by making that connection with your customer. You can communicate, because you can communicate instantly. I mean, think about it. If you wanted to communicate to your customers today that something was going on in the market, maybe, prices were headed up, there was disturbance in the Middle East that looks like it was going to keep supply tight, or whatever the situation might be, to be able to share that information with your customers instantaneously to help them make informed purchase decisions is something that we found that customers grab onto and will say, oh, thanks for sharing that, because they don't get it anywhere else. I mean, if you look at the competitive advantage block on this slide, who else is doing that for their customers? My guess is that in your particular marketplace, probably very, very few of your competitors are actually using that capability today, if at all. Now, we don't have time in the webinar to go through all of the examples, but I think Adrian will mention at the end of this webinar that you have an opportunity to get a copy of this presentation if you so desire, so you can take a closer look at some of the examples. We're only going to look at a few of the highlighted ones as we go through, so we stay true to our time commitment. But example number 3 is an online fuel company where they are capturing customer and prospect email addresses. And to give you an idea how quickly this list grows, just this past month, we had looked at the increase in email addresses that this particular online customer had between the beginning of October, about the first week of October and the first week of November. Their email list had actually increased by 24% in 1 month. It's actually a little bit less than 1 month, but 24%, huge increase in the size of that list. And we're talking about a list for this particular client that's in the thousands, so we're not talking about very small numbers. But you get that kind of growth, particularly this time of the year, as more people search for fuel as we're coming into the heating season. But over the course of the 12 months, you're easily, as long as you follow guidelines that we provide to our clients, easily doubling your e-list that you're communicating to customers in your market, in your service or your delivery territory that that are looking for the fuel that you're selling, and you can communicate with them easily and efficiently. So, email list, the key to communicating efficiently. All right, switching our attention to Meatloaf tip number 2, the e-newsletter. This is actually one of the more powerful techniques that our energy engine clients use to stimulate activity, traffic to the site, orders. It creates a very powerful call to action and drives very immediate business. A couple of advantages of e-newsletters is they can, in fact, be produced internally. There are good online tools that are available. One of them that we use more often than not, or our clients use, is Constant Contact. There's iContact out there and a number of other people that provide very similar services. You know, that kind of manage your e-list, allow for unsubscribes, allow for customers to sign up, you know, for your newsletter or for promotional information, or however you have it structured, and all done at a very, very low cost. Constant Contact accounts for most of our clients cost anywhere between about $25 and $50 a month. You know, where you have the ability to produce, to store, to compose, to add graphics, to make you know, newsletters the way you want them to look like, all for that small amount of money. And to distribute, I think at $50 a month, you might be your e-list might be up at about 10,000 or so. So very, very low cost, very efficient way to be able to do it. Give you one example, example number 3 here, which is our highlighted example on this slide. We had one of our customers, one of our clients back in August that decided to do a preseason offer to customers. At that particular time, the market was actually moving up fairly steadily, and did two things in the e-newsletters. Shared some of the information in terms of the direction that the market was going, so suggested to all the customers and the prospects that it might be a good time to take a look at how much fuel you had, and if you needed an order, maybe place that order now before prices went any higher. And then the other thing that he did was he offered a small promotional allowance to anyone receiving that email. And by recollection, I think it may have been about 3 cents or 5 cents a gallon. It wasn't a lot, but it was a preseason offer that was only good for a limited period of time. The results from that particular effort was that this client, who actually had been doing online at that point for a little bit more than a year, his orders in August is a warm month, it's before the season starts, you're not usually getting a lot of orders, and those of you that are in the business know that you're working at that time of the year generally to keep your drivers busy. This client actually took more orders in August than they did last January. So just an example of the power of the e-newsletter. Meatloaf tip number 3, auto-response. Autoresponders are those emails that you receive back when you do business with a company online. If you think Amazon, and most of you have probably used Amazon at one time or another, you know, if you're an Amazon shopper, or certainly any of the major or professional sites, professional e-commerce sites, you know, if you place an order, you'll receive your order confirmation on screen, and you'll also get an email confirmation of that order. Then when it ships, you'll get a delivery notification. You know, after you receive delivery, you may get a final confirmation with your dollars and cents settlement amount. Well, the same thing takes place in platforms like the Energy Engine, you know, from us, where customers that are placing an order online receive 3 communications. You know, when they place the order confirmation, the gallons that they ordered, how much that cost, what their total expense will be, and so forth, and sets their expectations for when that delivery will be made based upon the standards or the delivery rules of that particular client. So it might be you'll get that delivery within 48 hours, or you know, we make that delivery in that particular zone next Thursday, or whatever the situation might be. The next auto response that you get is when the company that you placed the order from schedules that delivery. And they just insert the day they're making the delivery or the dates, and the system automatically sends out another email. So now that customer is not wondering, when the heck's my delivery going to come? They know that we planned that delivery for this particular date. And then finally, after the delivery is made, not only does the customer receive the typical printed delivery ticket at the house, but then also a delivery confirmation email that confirms the number of gallons that were delivered, and then settles all the dollars and cents against that. Certainly all of those communications are important because every time those communications go out, it puts your brand in front of the customer. It creates a little bit stronger connection with that customer because you are now satisfactorily setting their expectations rather than having them wonder or making them want to call the office to find out what's going on with their delivery and so forth. And also, it also creates an opportunity each time to actually do an upsell if you so desire as part of that. So autoresponders are very, very key to the e-commerce world and being able to build customer loyalty and build customer satisfaction. All right, moving along to Meatloaf tip number 4, behavioral marketing. This gets to be a little bit more elegant in terms of marketing, but it's not anything that requires a lot of work on your part, or certainly in the case of our Energy Engine clients. And we kind of refer to behavioral marketing as kind of the holy grail of online selling because the technology, the internet, makes this possible in the online world where it doesn't really make it possible or practical, certainly, in the offline world. So what is behavioral marketing? These are emails or messaging back to a visitor or a customer that are automatically triggered based upon the behavior of that visitor to your online website. So if we think about purchasing fuel online as an example, our clients will have potential customers coming to their site and wanting to check the price in their town. And in order to do that, they'll enter their email address and their zip code, and the screen will then display the precise price in their town at all of the different quantity breaks. So as part of that, interaction, we actually captured that email address, which is extremely valuable for the company because now you have a customer that you know if they quoted heating oil as an example, you know that they're a heating oil user, you know what area of your delivery territory they live in, and you know how to communicate with them. So you can actually go back to them because we, as you can imagine, not all customers that quote price are currently customers. Hopefully they'll become customers at some point, but they're not currently customers. So what may happen in behavioral marketing, depending upon how a client has it set up, is at some point after that customer quotes price, assuming that they don't go on to register an order, but at some time, maybe it's 30 minutes from now, an hour from now, maybe it's tomorrow morning, that customer or that visitor would receive an email, thanking them for visiting the site, hoping that they found the site useful, the pricing information helpful to them, and inviting them to become a customer. And maybe even adding to that a first-time order promotional code to incent that customer to become, or incent that visitor to become a customer the first time. That's an example of behavioral marketing where that message and that offer was triggered specifically based upon the behavior of that visitor to the site that quoted price but did not become a customer. And it's just, one example. And that's actually what I took you through as example number 1. Example number 3 is another example of behavioral marketing where, maybe it's now the 1st of January or so, and you haven't had an order from a customer since maybe sometime in November. So you know that customer is due for a delivery. And again, based upon the rules that you have set up and how you have your behavioral marketing set up, an automatic message could be generated to go to that customer and say, and tell them, hey, haven't heard from you in a while. Our records indicate that you're probably likely for an order. So it's a way, again, to go back to that customer, you're again building that connection and that relationship, because they get that email and they say, oh, they know me, they're looking out for me, and maybe they forgot to check their fuel level recently, and it results in them using the link that's right in that email, going right back to your site and placing that order. So another example of behavioral marketing. Meatloaf tip number 5, retargeting. This is actually something that's relatively simple to do, but also somewhat new to internet marketing. But we've done some work with it and have found it to be effective. What retargeting, or sometimes you'll hear it called re-advertising or remarketing. But what retargeting does is it converts visitors to your website that left without buying. And the way that happens is, and the reason why this is important is you can see, in box number 1 there, about 2% of shoppers convert on their first visit to an online store. Okay, so that leaves the other 98% that visited, but did not convert to a customer. So what retargeting does is gives you the opportunity to put your ad in front of that 98% when they are visiting other websites that they visit online. So they may have left your site and they're doing some things, and they go to Yahoo, and all of a sudden there's an ad on the Yahoo page for your particular business. That is retargeting. So what it does is it gives your visitors additional chances to convert, because that ad appears when they're on Yahoo. They can just click on that ad, brings them right back to the site, and they can of course place their order or further interact with you. Why do it? Because it puts your brand in front of customers that are shopping, that are out on the internet browsing, and it certainly sets you apart from your competitors. Because they're probably the minority of companies today that are using retargeting, even though it is also very inexpensive. To give you an example of the ROI, most of the companies that offer this type of service, and I have several of the leading companies, AdRoll is probably the largest one, and we've used AdRoll, in some trials and some ongoing work. It's pretty easy to set this up. If you're familiar with Google AdWords, the same thing with retargeting. It can be managed through a budget, so you just set your budget level so you know exactly how much you're going to spend every month. And from our experience, customer acquisition costs have been less than $25 per customer. And if you relate to the industry numbers in terms of customer acquisition costs, whether it's a heating oil or a propane customer, the industry average numbers are between $400 and $600 to acquire a customer. So to acquire customers now at less than $25, obviously is a huge bargain. So retargeting, pretty cool stuff that can be done, pretty easily. It's all done automated behind the scenes. Your work is done on the setup, but even that is relatively simple. So a pretty cool way to actually, get in front of customers that are looking for exactly what it is that you're selling. Meatloaf tip number 6, as we get close to the end of our webinar here. Meatloaf tip number 6, what's your price? The feared what's your price question. That any of you that have, that are running energy companies, that your CSRs, get on probably an hourly basis. And the question that companies have always dealt with is, how do you deal with that customer, or how do you deal with that question effectively? We'd like all of our CSRs, even though we provide them with training and so forth, to answer that question the way that we'd like them to answer that, to deal with that customer, to actually engage that customer in a conversation rather than just giving them your price and the customer says thank you and hangs up. You want to be able to engage that customer, communicate the benefits of of your business, the services that you provide to the customer. You want that CSR to be able to ask that customer, confirm that what you have meets their needs, and that that's what they're looking for, and then ask them for the order. But you rarely get more than one chance to sell that customer that calls up and asks, "What's your price?" You only get one chance in the typical offline or phone engagement. Online, it becomes much different. First of all, the consistency of your communications, how you communicate to that customer what the benefits are of your company, is consistent online communications to every time, to every visitor to that site. So they're getting the same message. As we mentioned before in one of our Meatloaf tips, we then have behavioral marketing that kicks in. So that customer comes to your site, right, and they ask online the "what's your price" question, so they quote price, but they effectively say thank you and don't buy that time. But now you can use behavioral marketing to go back to them and to resell that visitor, automated. Remember, you don't have the opportunity, if that's a phone call, you don't have the opportunity to call that customer back, or the time or the resources typically to be able to do that, even if you wanted to undertake that sort of thing. In the online world, it becomes very easy to resell that visitor and even offer them an incentive, like we mentioned on behavioral marketing. You can then retarget. You can also retarget that customer, can reinforce that message. If your ad appears on some of the other sites that they browse, oftentimes customers for fuel will go to an online site. Everything might be beautiful. They might say, "Yeah, I'd like to make this purchase," but they just don't have any room in their tank to be able to take a delivery. So it's important that you, in fact, stay in front of them so you become part of their consideration set when they're ready to place that order. You don't want them to forget about you. And then last, the e-newsletters that we talked about a few minutes ago, because again, you've captured that customer's email address, so now you have the ability to communicate information or incentives or promotions or whatever it might be back to that customer again to get them to convert. So your conversion rate is the result online of a much, much higher conversion rate, as long as you use the tools that are available to you. Finally, Meatloaf tip number 7, the site traffic. As we talk to our clients all the time, we tell them it all starts with the traffic. And when we first put together this webinar, which is now about 2 months ago, we used these examples. This was actually, this was back in August, so the numbers down at the bottom are actually August numbers. It's before we got into the season, so the numbers are a little bit lower than certainly they are now that the weather's a little bit colder. But it all starts with the traffic. The top graph there are targets that we set for each one of our clients with their help, and it's based upon their particular territory and how they're marketing. But you can see in this particular case, with one of our clients that has been using the techniques that we just went through, their target was 480 average visits per month. They were hitting 804 in August already. Their unique visitors, their target was 240. They actually were hitting 534, so better than doubling their traffic to the site. And like we say, it all starts with the traffic. You need to get the folks to your site first before they can place an order. And then some of the other targets, their bounce rate, they were well under the bounce rate. The conversion rate in August was what it was. But you can see the effectiveness that this particular company was achieving using the tools that we talked about compared to their targets. So very, very measurable, very demonstrable in terms of what's possible to achieve using the tools. And again, it's an important point, is the cost of marketing in the online world is dramatically less than it is in the offline world. And I'm also speaking from experience because I started my career a good number of years ago, before most of us were buying online, before most of us knew what a website was. And offline marketing very much more expensive, and even more so today relative to the online world. So it's very effective and also very efficient. So one of the questions that we normally get at about this time is, well, all right, I do all those things. Should I be selling fuel online? Does it make sense? What kind of results can I expect? What this slide does is just shares with you what the results are that we would project for a territory that has 40,000 heating oil households. That's actually a little bit below average in terms of the number of heating oil households that we would see in the average company delivery territory. But even in that case, after year one, following the techniques or following the guidelines that we provide to our clients, if they follow those guidelines, we'd expect them to capture about 0.8% of a market share. Okay, a little bit less than 1% of those 40,000 available customers that are in their delivery territory. At the end of year three, we'd expect that market share would build to 3% after year three. So that would mean after year three, you'd have a total of 1,200 customers, which would represent, as that business builds in years 1, 2, and 3, 1.5 million gallons worth of volume and a net profit back to the corporation as a net profit. That's after the expenses for delivery, after your marketing expenses, after your credit card expenses, everything, back to the corporation, a net of about $285,000. So you can see it is a path that is worth following and can be very profitable for companies and certainly very satisfying to see your ability to grow the customers and your gallons using online techniques. So with that wraps up our Meatloaf webinar this morning. Certainly online marketing does deliver, and we hope we gave you some examples of that. I'm going to go ahead and turn the webinar back to Adrian for any questions that any of you might have, and we'll stick around to answer them.
Good job, John. And there are a few questions. The first one being, have you used social media?
Speak for our clients at this point, which is where we're drawing some of this information. Yes, we do have some clients that are now using social media to do various things. Although I will say that it's probably very underdeveloped at this point, and there's more opportunity. But to give you a couple of examples, e-newsletters. We see clients now linking those e-newsletters or actually sharing those e-newsletters or limiting content of those into Facebook accounts and Twitter accounts. So people that might be following a company on Facebook or Twitter, might be getting a notification of, information or a promotion or something like that via their social media accounts. There's one client that I'm thinking of that we did work for. This probably goes back a couple of years ago, and he was instituting what he called price tweets, where he was a company that had a terminal and storage, and particularly in a market that was on the rise. Generally he had some inventory in his tanks if the market was headed up, and he may be planning to make a price change based upon the movement of the market, but he would do a price tweet out to his customers that were following him on Twitter and might say, hey, prices are going up at 8 o'clock this evening. Place your orders before then, to be able to buy at the current price. Was another example of social media. Adrian, anything else come to mind for you?
No, I had completely forgot about that client, and that was a great example. I do know that the majority of our clients are utilizing it. It is new, and it is bringing in, it is bringing in some extra. And like I said, it's new, but the more we utilize it, the more followers you get. Okay, the next question is, can you help with how to do this stuff?
Well, with our clients, we certainly do. We actually provide a marketing roadmap, for our online clients in terms of how to do the things that we talked about, in this particular webinar, or how to align yourselves with the resources. I talked about retargeting and ad roll. How to do that, how to integrate with Constant Contact through your e-newsletters. All of those things, we do for our clients. We don't do the actual marketing, so if you needed somebody to write your e-newsletters or something like that, we have resources certainly that we work with that we readily refer to our clients to assist them with that. So, yeah, the easy answer is yes, we can help with all of those things that we talked about today.
Okay, good. Another question is, sounds great for add-on sales by existing fuel company. Does it work in a standalone use?
Oh, wow. Great question. Yes, it does. We have one client on our engine right now that actually, although he's been associated with the industry for years, so he's very well experienced. He's actually launching a new business, and he's using using our energy engine actually as his operating system and just doing the business online, setting it up online. So he's he's a current example in practice. But even when we launched the business back in 2000. While we were associated with a traditional full service as well as COD, larger company that did heating oil, propane, commercial fuels, HVAC, and a whole lot more, we launched the online business under a separate brand. And while we didn't particularly hide the ownership or the relationship between the businesses, the brand that we put out in the marketplace was brand new to customers. They did not know it. So it was very much like starting a business from scratch, because we started with customer number one and then, built that thing over the 9 years or so that we were involved with that particular business, and enjoyed, considerable success in building a large customer base over 10 states. So, yep, it certainly can be done as a standalone.
Okay, good. And this sounds good, but also very expensive and difficult to do.
No, it really isn't. We talked about e-newsletters with a Constant Contact account costing between $25 and $50 a month to handle all of the logistics or the development of the e-newsletter. Even if you are using, a marketing resource to write this, compared to, and many of you probably have used the traditional 4-page printed newsletters at one time or another. Maybe you're still doing it today. By contrast, an e-newsletter is short, so it's not covering a dozen different topics like you might be doing in a printed newsletter. You're doing it more frequently. You might be doing a campaign that, here we are, the 15th of November. Thanksgiving is next week. We could very well have clients doing Thanksgiving sales in order to stimulate volume between now and Thanksgiving, or now to the end of the month, and you may wind up reminding those customers about that promotion, maybe when there's just a few days left, so that they can come back in and buy if they forgot about it. Maybe now by then they have room in their tank. So you may be sending 2 or 3 emails on the same campaign. Even if you're using an outside resource to actually develop the content needed for that, you're still talking about maybe a couple $100, but dramatically less than you would pay for a for a paper newsletter and be able to get it out instantaneously. Your ROI on e-newsletters is so great that you really can't make an argument not to do it. You got to do it. Some of the other things, the collection of the email addresses, easily done. The retargeting, again, on a customer acquisition, you set your budget there, but a customer acquisition cost less than $25, very inexpensive. I'm thinking about some of the other techniques, and it's more expensive to place small space newspaper ads to promote your business than it is to from most of the other online techniques. So, so no, it really isn't that expensive. It's much less expensive and done well, even more efficient.
Okay, great. Well, that seems to wrap up the questions. So at this time, I'd like to once again say great job, John, and to say thank you. Thank you to you, John, and thank you to our attendees for taking the time for this webinar. You will be receiving an email from me, as John mentioned, with instructions on how to request a copy of the presentation should you want one, or to let you know how you can email us and ask us questions should you have any. So again, thank you, and I wish everyone a wonderful day.
Yeah, thanks for attending, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye-bye. Good afternoon. My name is Adrienne Ackerley, and I am your host this afternoon. To help us avoid any unnecessary background noise, may I ask, if you have not already done so, please enter your audio pin, which you will find on the right side of your screen. You simply press the pound sign, then the number listed, and then the pound sign again directly into your phone. Welcome to our Energy Edge webinar, Selling Fuel Online. This webinar is geared to take approximately 40 minutes, as we know that your time is valuable. Once we have completed, we will open it up to a short Q&A section, so please hold your questions until then, or you can simply type them in on the right side of your screen and we will address them after the presentation. If you notice on the right side of your screen, about 3/4 of the way down, you'll see a little box marked chat. You can simply type your questions right on in there and we'll get to them right at the end. Let me begin by introducing John Vrabel. John is a founding partner and the managing partner of Energy Edge, as well as our resident expert in business development with a proven track record for building businesses that are rewarded by the marketplace. John?
Hey, thanks, Adrienne, and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. As we get started, Adrienne, I just want to confirm that my audio sounds okay for everyone.
You sound great.
Okay, thanks. So what we're going to do is spend about 40 minutes or so, pretty fast-paced 40 minutes, providing you with a lot of information, a lot of it having to do with changes that are occurring in the industry that we spend most of our time supporting, which is really downstream energy, propane companies, heating oil companies, commercial fuel companies, HVAC companies, and related energy services companies. And we're seeing a ton of change as our energy environment certainly is changing very rapidly, and matter of fact is likely to continue to change. Matter of fact, those of you that tuned into this week's presidential debate, saw some discussion in terms of what our energy future might look like, and it for finally, after several decades of trying, it looks like we're really within the grasp of being energy independent in the U.S., and that's going to come from a variety of different types of energy that creates opportunities for us, as well as requires some changes to how we think about our business and some of the things that we do. So with that, talking about the market changing, we work with a lot of different companies and wind up talking with a lot more companies in the industry, and there's a lot that's going on, in terms of what companies are doing, are executing in terms of their growth plan. We hear a lot in the industry about diversification. We see a lot of that being done, where heating oil companies are adding propane to their business. Propane companies are adding other uses or promoting other uses of propane in terms of diversification. We see a ton, particularly in New England, things like adding backup generation. As a result of some weather events that have taken place there in New England in the last roughly 18 months now, which is certainly a popular use for propane powering backup generation. We see companies adding other services, maybe air conditioning service to their service department. We see companies that are maybe heating oil companies now installing gas equipment or servicing natural gas equipment as their market, their customers, and so forth continue to change. There are also a lot of companies out there that are just kind of taking things as they come, one day at a time, and some of them hoping that they'll they'll get increases in gallons. You know, some of them hoping that it's going to be a cold winter so that the that their business improves from maybe what they did this past year. I've spent the last, I hate to say this, but almost 30 years now building businesses, and you know, whether it's for large publicly owned companies or it's for you know, small you know, independent heating oil or propane companies, and so I've always been focused on that growth plan. Every year, what's your plan going to be? How are you going to improve your business? How are you going to grow it? I see the industry, and we've been talking about this for the last several years, kind of at the same place that that maybe the industry was maybe back in the 1930s or so. You know, the picture over to the right of a JDO and coal truck. You know, many of the roots of our heating oil or propane businesses today, or commercial fuels businesses, you know, are back in coal and even firewood. Many of those companies that still exist today were facing this transition as coal became less popular. Many of them went to heating oil and became heating oil companies. We're at that same kind of transition today. The heating oil market is changing. So what, if you could project yourself ahead, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, you know, what services will you be providing to your customers that they need at that particular time? We're going to talk a little bit today, and the purpose of this webinar was to talk a little bit about what a group of companies are doing in terms of their growth plans, where they're actually increasing the gallons that they're selling of heating oil or other fuels by actually introducing an online channel or an online business side by side with what they're currently doing. And e-commerce, some people you know, have different definitions of it, but so just so that we're all on the same page, you know, e-commerce is quite simply the buying and selling of products and services over the internet. Think Amazon for the sake of this this webinar. You know, where you can go to Amazon, you can research different products. You can make a decision to purchase that. You can pay for it online. You can track that entire transaction online, and that product just shows up at your doorstep. That's what we're talking about in terms of e-commerce. Four areas that we'll go through in this webinar is talk a little bit about online sales and the results that companies are seeing. Very specific results in terms of what they're seeing as far as the results of offering online to their customers. We'll also share with you some key learnings about online fuel sales. Now, these are learnings that we've gathered over about the last 12 years. We have been actively engaged in selling fuel online. We started originally ourselves in 2000 and actually ran a business that got to be quite sizable up until 2009, and then we launched Energy Edge. We no longer operate our own business, but one of the things that we do is provide a software platform that we call the Energy Engine that companies are now using to run their own online fuel business. We'll also talk about an e-commerce business system, because there are a number of things that you need to put together in order to be able to do business online, to sell fuel online. You know, in addition to just having a platform where you know, a potential customer could go to a website maybe that you put up and be able to place an order. There's a little bit more that goes along with it, but it's all very manageable, so we'll walk through some of that. And then also talk about some of the results that companies are achieving. So those are the four areas we're going to cover. First, let's talk about the shift being on. And, you know, by the shift being on, we're seeing dramatic changes in terms of how consumers purchase, not just fuel, but purchase things in general. The chart that is in the middle of this page, you can see growth taking place. This is actually representative of online retail sales. So this would be anything from Target.com to Amazon to Lowe's.com to your favorite retailer.com, or companies that you don't even know that you go and you buy specialized products at. Online sales have continued to increase at almost a torrid pace actually beyond more than the last 5 years. One of the interesting things is as we've gone through the Great Recession that started in 2008, online sales have continued to keep pace, even though many of the same retailers that run an online business as well had a difficult time increasing their sales in their brick-and-mortar stores. Online continued to move as more and more people bought online, realized the convenience of it, and continued to go to the internet to make their purchases. Point number 2 here points out one of the reasons why that's happening is we see more consumers are actually buying more online. So we have more people going online to make purchases, and those of us that are online are buying more of what we buy online. So you kind of have that double impact. And today, 80% of internet users are making purchases online. So, in the U.S. here, internet usage is virtually universal. So what we're seeing is now about 80% of, essentially 80% of the adults or 80% of the shopping public in the U.S. is actually purchasing online as well. So it's, getting to be that it's just about everybody, including your customers. So let's talk a little bit about heating oil because we have some very specific numbers as we get into this heating season now in the middle of October. But if we turn the dial back and look at last heating season, which most of us remember as not being the best heating season we've ever enjoyed, as temperatures were much warmer than they typically are. And what we saw was heating oil sales last season down anywhere between 25 and 40%. Depending upon the region or the area in the Northeast that the company was located. Those are the numbers that played out last year. So huge declines in volume. At the same time, however, for the same season, online fuel sales now were up anywhere from 12% to actually better than 100%. So even online fuel sales, which is relatively new, is seeing the same kind of dynamics that the retail industry overall has been seeing as far as more people opting to buy online for the benefits that it provides to them. 3 key learnings that we'll touch on. One is embrace it, don't fear it. And we'll talk a little bit about that because a lot of companies are looking at online sales and selling fuel online. I was working with one of those customers, potential customers, earlier this morning who's just, afraid of or making sure that the online business that she wants to launch does not impact her current business negatively. One of the other key learnings is e-commerce lowers your operating costs while it also raises your margins. So very interesting dynamic there that we'll give you a little bit of information on. And also, the third key learning is knowing what it takes to run an online business. So let's talk about the first one. Embrace it, don't fear it. Back when we first launched the business that we operated for 9 years, back in 2000, we were in this position also where we had much more to gain than we had to lose. We were a company that had a full service. We were heating oil, propane, service installation company doing business in about 4 states, maybe 5 states at that point. And we had, we weren't a huge company, but we were more a medium-sized company in the industry. We had about 27,000 customers, of which about 12,000 of them were full-service customers. And then we launched online. So we certainly didn't want to take our full-service customers and move them over to online. So the position that our majority shareholder at that point took, and our CEO was, we have much more to gain than we have to lose. Even at our size in our primary market, we only had a little bit more than 10% of the market share. And he said to us, our upside is really that we have the other 90% to gain. If we look at, and that was very true, if we look at the average company in the heating oil industry, for example, the average company has somewhere between about a 3 and a 5% market share in their individual markets. So their upside is well over 90% of the customers that are available in their delivery territory that they're not currently serving. So there's a huge upside. E-commerce also provides companies that are doing that today, that are introducing that service to their customers, a huge competitive advantage, because as we see today, we have only about 9 to 12% of the fuel marketers that can transact business online. They're represented by this little wedge of this pie right here. The other 90% roughly of your competitors do not have an online strategy. So we talk with companies on a regular basis that certainly want to capture gallons in their market, and they get the secondary benefit of really having this advantage over their competitors, which helps them capture gallons. The other thing about embrace it, don't fear it, is what I alluded to before. The fear of losing full-service customers if you have an online option for your customers, and we can tell you quite definitively that fear is unwarranted. Full-service customers buy from you because they want, or they buy full service because they want peace of mind, they want the security, the convenience that comes along with being a full-service customer. They want to know that you're there to service their heating system if they have a failure during the winter. They want that peace of mind more than anything else. They know that they're paying more for that, and they expect to pay more for that level of service. So if we look at these two case studies over here to the right, case study number 1 was actually one that we did. This was back in 01-02, so it's about 10 years old now. And like I said, we didn't want to lose our full-service customers to online. And actually, as we tracked it, it was actually amounted to less than 1%. It was 1/2 of 1% that of our full-service customers that became customers of our online business. And chances are, we know some of those customers, we were losing full-service customers at that time. They were looking for other alternatives. And we may very well have lost these full-service customers anyway. The good news about having the online solution for them was we actually caught those customers as they were potentially going out the door. We were providing them with a different level of service that made more sense for those customers, even though it was a relatively insignificant number. Case study number 2 is actually one that's still going on. This is a company, it's actually one of our clients that uses our energy engine up in Massachusetts, and they've been sharing data with us over the last number of months, and this is pretty interesting. This is the source. This is where their online customers have come from. 30% of their customers, about 1/3 of their customers, are absolutely new to the company. So these are customers they've never done business with. This is a company that's been in business for about 50 years, maybe more than that, but a long time. Very well known, matter of fact, a leading company in their particular market in Massachusetts. So they've been able to go out into the marketplace now with online and attract customers they have been unsuccessful attracting for the last number of decades. Pretty cool. Another 13% of their customers were customers they had previously lost. And this came to them from a very deliberate activity. They simply sent postcards to inactive heating oil customers that had gone to competitors for whatever reason over the last couple of years, sent them a postcard telling them about their online option, and now 13% of their online customers they've actually won back that they had previously lost. About half their customers, 52%, are customers that had formerly done business with them on a COD basis by phone. So these are the customers that would call up, what's your price? Let me get back to you, finally place an order. These customers are now using the online platform, some of which is because they save a couple of pennies a gallon by doing that. And the company is very okay with that because, as we'll see in a couple of slides, your margins for online are greater because your operating costs are less. So this company is actually making more money serving their former COD phone customers online. So they just assume all their COD phone customers go to their online platform. And then in their case, 5% of their online customers actually were former customers that were doing that were buying from them on a full service basis. That number actually was a little bit higher than we thought that it would be. We were projecting about 3%, and it was a little bit higher. But the company, explained to us, they said, we've been losing 5 or 6 automatic customers every month. To competitors, they've been leaving the business. Now with online, we've been able to convert many of those that otherwise were planning to leave over to online. They're in a somewhat more economically depressed area in Massachusetts, in western Massachusetts, and they have a lot of customers that have moved off of full service because the customers are pinching pennies and trying to economize on their fuel sales. So they felt just fine with this 5%, understanding that they captured those customers before they went to a competitor, and they can still make good margins serving them online. All right, we talked about this a little bit. Lower your operating costs and increase your margins, and that's something that's that hasn't happened a lot in the recent history of downstream energy. Typically, if we want to raise our margins, and we've listened to some of the experts, at some of the conventions at ANARI or NEFI or the state conventions and so forth, they talk about increasing their margins. Typically, means increase your price. Well, with online, you can actually increase your margins while you reduce your price, or leave your price the same because your operating costs are less. We're not going to take a ton of time going through these, but I'm going to go through a number of them to give you an idea where these savings come from, because they're actually very demonstrable savings. Some of the largest amount comes in delivery efficiency. The average drop size for an online customer, assuming that you're following our guidelines, will average about 200 gallons. Matter of fact, we're seeing that same thing from our clients. It was one of our clients that was talking to me about a week ago about drop size, actually pulled his data for him, and his drop size this last month in September was actually 221 gallons average drop size for his online business. That paled because his drop size for his full service business was down in about the 140 gallon area. But 200 gallons is what matter of fact, we ran 204 gallons consistently year after year. And we see our clients as well now running their own online businesses enjoying that same benefit. The industry says that the average drop size across the entire industry is about 153 gallons. So if you're dropping 200 gallons, you're essentially dropping an additional 50 gallons at that location. And your expenses for your truck, your expenses for your driver are already covered. So your margin on that incremental 50 gallons is huge, has a huge impact. Also, delivery efficiencies. Even though these are on-demand orders for the most part that are done online, your drivers make those deliveries just like automatics. They go to the house, hook up, pump the order, and away they go. Homeowner doesn't need to be there. They're not picking up cash. They're not picking up checks, that sort of thing. So what winds up happening when you add the online business is you wind up increasing your delivery density within your service territory. So consequently, you wind up delivering more gallons per driver. So you're already paying that driver a certain payroll expense. You're getting more gallons delivered by that driver, so your delivery cost goes down on a per gallon basis. Plus, you're also delivering more gallons per truck because when you increase your delivery density. So now that very expensive asset that you have in your fleet becomes more efficient. So not only are the online deliveries, and this is kind of an interesting dynamic, not only are your online deliveries more efficient, but you're increasing your delivery density for your entire fleet. So the heritage side of your business, your full service business, if you're a full service company, or your full service deliveries also become more efficient. So you actually make more money in your traditional side of the business while you're making money on the online side. On the cash management side, you also have lower costs. All deliveries, again, as long as you follow our guidelines, are prepaid. So you have absolutely no bad debt. You're not picking up checks, again, as long as you follow our guidelines, so you have no bad checks that you have to chase. If you're using an automated platform, which you absolutely should be using, because customers expect that today, is you don't have anyone in your back office that's sitting there at a terminal keying in your credit cards. You don't want to do that. And even when you're issuing account credits, you don't want to do manual account credits either. You want the system to automatically do that for you based upon what your user is doing. And you say, well, why would you be issuing account credits? Well, for example, one of the things that happens is a customer may order a fill, or say a customer orders 200 gallons, and you get there and the customer only take 180 gallons. A credit for the equivalent of that 20 gallons needs to be credited back to the account. You know, in an automated platform, that credit is done automated, so you don't have potential for error or all the employee cost that's involved in doing that. And then administratively, there are also some savings too. You have a greatly reduced customer care expense. You have paperless processes in your office, which are much more efficient than moving paper around the office, as we customarily have done in the business. And then the third thing is, you know, what does it take to run a business? What does it take to run an online business? And it's really not much different than it takes to run any business. I mean, one of the big things is it does take a commitment. Online is a new business for you, so you need to give it the attention that it deserves. That said, it doesn't require a lot of resources. We get the question, you know, regularly, can the manager or the owner run the business? Well, the answer is yes, as long as that manager or owner can devote, you know, a sufficient amount of time to it. Oftentimes, you know, we see with, you know, with our clients where they actually introduce or maybe groom someone else in the organization by having them run the online business, or maybe that other employee has expressed an interest, or maybe they're more computer savvy and they like the challenge of running the online business. You know, so we have sons and daughters of owners. We have nieces or nephews of owners sometimes. In other cases, it's a valued employee that has you know, kind of a computer aptitude and an interest that, you know, we work with to kind of teach them the ropes of an online business. But the good news is it doesn't take a lot of people. Matter of fact, as you get up and running, it really takes less than one full-time person to run an online business. You don't have to staff for an online business. You already have those people in the business typically. It also takes some marketing. You know, you need to let people know. Once you build it, you need to let people know that it exists. So you need to drive traffic to your online business. We've had a lot of experience doing that over the years. One of the things that we actually provide is a roadmap, a marketing roadmap for our clients that they can follow, and provide them with ongoing guidance on the key things marketing-wise that work. So, you know, the advantage you have with us is we've done it ourselves. So we spent a ton of money over the years on trying different things that, you know, some of which did not work, and have now gelled down our marketing roadmap to those things that do work for customers. And one of the other things about marketing, and you know, is retention is just as important as acquisition. One of the things that we found out very strongly about an online business is you can actually develop strong loyalty from an online, on-demand customer that quite honestly surprised us. But you can do that through actually very effective and low-cost or almost no-cost communications to them, because remember, you're dealing with these customers electronically, so you have information dropping into their inbox, their email, or maybe to text messaging to them. So there are retention techniques where we have been able to develop, like I say, a surprising amount of loyalty from on-demand customers. We also, or you want to avoid some of the rookie mistakes, and you know, we can talk about the rookie mistakes because we've made a lot of them ourselves over the years. You know, you don't want to make this a manual business. You know, you don't want to be keying credit cards or something like that in the back office. Two reasons. One, it adds to the expense of the business. So now instead of reducing your cost, you're adding cost to operate this business. You don't want to do that. The other thing is consumers today. Remember that 80% of internet users that we said are buying online. You know, they expect a certain experience now. When they go to Amazon, you know, it's intuitive, it's easy. They can complete the entire transaction online. By the time they're finished, they have a confirmation on screen, and that confirmation has already showed up in their inbox. That product ships, they get a shipping notification. When that product arrives, they get the final order confirmation. That type of experience, upsells actually, suggestions, recommendations, reviews, that's the type of experience online the customers are expecting today. So you certainly don't want to make this a manual business and not give the customer the same kind of experience that they expect online. The other thing we suggest is let it stand alone, at least for a number of years. What we mean by that is your online business should be its own profit center. Make sure that you're making money in the business. Make sure that you're hitting the metrics that we provide to our clients in terms of things like average drop size or the traffic to your website and the percentage of that traffic that's actually converting to customers. Understand those metrics, and it's much easier to do if you let the business stand alone. And then the other thing is setting your business rules. Business rules for online, many of them are different types of business rules than we've encountered before in our traditional business. And believe me, as we went through the years, we didn't figure these things out ourselves. We learned these things as we encountered some different types of problems online that we would normally encounter in the traditional business. So setting business rules for your online platform and having the platform be able to adapt to how customers buy fuel online is very important, so that they have that good experience and you don't have customer service issues that you need to deal with or manual processes that you need to run in your back office. The last thing about it is and this is pretty important, is it's not all about the price. Oftentimes we'll be working with a company and they'll be ready to set up their online business, and they'll say, well, okay, online I need to have the best price in the market. And our response to that is, no, you don't. No, don't go there. We'll give you, we'll walk you through pricing guidance in terms of, what's necessary for you to attract and convert the traffic that you get to your site. But it's not all about price, and this kind of captures it all, because we've heard this over the years ourselves, and our clients continue to hear this today almost verbatim, is, I came for the price. I came because you had a competitive price on your heating oil or your propane or your diesel fuel or whatever it is. But I stayed for the convenience because it's just so darn easy to do business with you that way. And that convenience has a value. And matter of fact, over time, we were able to do some things in terms of margin, enhancing margin, because customers really weren't buying just for the price. I mean, they compare price a lot of times, but they really valued the online for the convenience that it provided to them. All right, so moving into the next section, we talked about an e-commerce business system and kind of putting it all together. We talked a little bit about a robust e-commerce platform. That's one of the basics that you need. You need that technology to be able to handle the customer. Like we said before, most importantly here, and I'm not going to go over all of these, you need to meet the customer expectation in terms of the sophistication of your platform. Otherwise, you look like a company that maybe doesn't have all the security in place that they're accustomed to, doesn't have all the convenience in place that they're accustomed to, and they're likely to move off of your site and go elsewhere. You also need a realistic business plan for your online business. A financial plan, a marketing plan, a management plan. We actually, help with that. And matter of fact, you'll see in a couple of slides just a little bit a peek at a financial plan and kind of what it means. But we've been doing this so long that we these things are pretty simple for us. So we pass on that knowledge also to our clients to help them set realistic goals and then measure against those goals as you go through the course of the year. And then the third thing you need is the resources to work with you to be able to execute an online business plan. One of the resources you need, like we talked before, is you need a manager. You need somebody in your business who is accountable for this online business. And accountable is kind of the operative word there. Somebody who's held accountable for that business. The P&L of that business, the volume that you're doing through that business, are you meeting the numbers? Because if you have someone accountable, they're going to pay attention to the business. So it's important that somebody be accountable. You need a small amount of marketing resources, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of those things on an upcoming slide. It doesn't mean you need a large full-service advertising agency, or that you're going to be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on marketing. Not by any means. Matter of fact, online is very efficient from a marketing standpoint as well. but you do need to devote some marketing resources to it, because if you just put up the site without doing some of these other things, people are going to have a hard time finding you, and you're just not going to get the potential, the volume potential out of your market. And then you also need, somebody to count on, in terms of providing you ongoing, advice about how to do business online. And, that's one of the things that we provide to our clients at no additional cost, and actually regularly, provide a newsletter just for our clients, that is specifically oriented toward tips and learnings that we have to help them, do various things in their business, reminders for the season, some of the things that they should be doing right now in October in order to drive traffic and also get customers' tanks filled at this time of the year. Okay, we talked about some planning. This is a brief financial plan, but it really says a lot. This is actually a modeling that we provide to companies that are looking or considering doing an online business, and it's fairly accurate. This is actually numbers that we hit ourselves, and that we also have our clients now hitting as well. Again, as long as you follow the roadmap. This can be adjusted for whatever size delivery territory that you have. This is an example, happens to just be set at 40,000. One of the other inputs is your margin. 41 cents is a good target gross margin. It's a gross margin that we were able to hit as we were operating the business ourselves over a very, very broad geography, actually serving parts of 10 different states. So it took into account a lot of different markets, and 41 cents was a gross margin that we could hit on a consistent basis 12 months a year. And also your actual price per gallon. This price obviously is low for today's market, but as part of the modeling, any of this can be changed. If you follow our marketing roadmap, what we expect is that in year one, you would be able to hit a market share of about 0.8% of the heating oil households. We're just talking heating oil here, of the heating oil households in your delivery territory. Now, it doesn't sound like a lot, but remember that the average company in the industry only has a 3 to 5% market share. So in the first year, we're saying, we expect you to capture 0.8% market share with your online business, growing to 1.9 in 2 years, and now growing to 3% in year 3. And then it'll continue to grow from there, but we build this plan for the first 3 years for what we would refer to as your startup phase, your business development phase. In this particular market of 40,000, what that would equate to is 300 customers in your first year, and then growing from there as well. And I'm not going to take you through all of this, but you can see what it relates to in terms of your gallons, your gross margin over the course of the first 3 years. Of course, you have expenses against that. You have to pay to get those gallons delivered, even if you're paying yourself, your full service side of the business, or you're paying your fleet business if you have that set up as a separate operating entity. You're paying them. We're a little bit conservative with some of these numbers, but again, these can be changed. You have to invest in the marketing that we talked about. This also is a high number in terms of the investment needed in marketing, but we like to be conservative in this model. You have to account for your credit card fees, which is for online is a business that, or is an expense that is a significant expense. Again, we're being conservative. We have 2% in here. Your credit card processing should actually be less than 1.5%. So again, these can be adjusted. But you can see in this example that after your first 3 years of your startup period, you're still delivering back to the corporation $285,000 in net profit. We also talked about marketing plan. I'm not going to go through all of these in the sake of time, but we have 2 different groups of marketing tactics that we work through with our clients. One of them is what we call the Vital 6, the 6 most important things that we believe every company that's doing online should be using. Things like search engine optimization. It's a fundamental basic if you're doing business online, that site needs to be optimized so that the search engine spiders can find it. When somebody puts a search phrase into a Google search bar, you want your business to come up certainly on the first page, hopefully in the top 3 results that are on that page. Direct mail postcards, we mentioned inactive customers when we talked about the one case study. That's part of the Vital Six. Small space newspaper ads, particularly the first several years. Let local people know that you have this new business. Not very costly, but effective for driving customers, driving traffic to this. These other things really don't cost you anything in our case because they're already included in our capability within the Energy Engine. Behavioral marketing is one of those things that happens based upon how people behave when they go to the site. Those of you that shop Amazon see behavioral marketing take place on a regular basis. You know, if I was on Amazon yesterday shopping for a particular item and I did not make a purchase, I'm going to receive an email from Amazon today that suggests to me some similar items that I might be interested in so that they now can convert me from a browser to a buyer, to a customer. That's one example of behavioral marketing. Refer a friend. We all know the importance of customer referrals and referred customers being some of the best customers. An online business should have a completely automated referral process. So you're not tracking anything. You're not applying credits to accounts or what you're doing as rewards. That should all be automated. And then the sixth thing is very important. It's e-newsletters. And these are not the 4-page printed newsletters like we're accustomed to in the industry. These are sent via email. They're much shorter than those 4 printed pages are. They can happen at the drop of a hat. You can get an e-newsletter in the through to your customers this afternoon if there's certain information that you want to communicate to them, or maybe offer a special promotion because you've got more margin in your fuel, or you want to drive more volume, or whatever you want to do. E-newsletters, and e-newsletters are extremely effective if done properly in terms of developing that loyalty that we talked about with the online customer. We have other tactics that work for some companies depending upon their market situation. We're not going to go through those, but those are some that have worked for us or have worked for others, again, depending upon the particular situation that you're in. So once you have that plan in place, the other thing that we're doing now is we're being able to understand how much traffic our clients need to see to their sites in order to hit their numbers, to hit their plan. The beauty of doing business online, one of the beauties of doing business online is virtually everything is measurable. And here we're just looking at site traffic statistics that we've been working with now for about the last year, capturing experience from our clients so we can get a handle on what does it take to actually convert or make sure you're getting enough customers to hit your marketing plan. You know, in the traditional business, we might see reports after every period or maybe every quarter in terms of how well are we doing, are we hitting our numbers? In an online business, you can know that virtually every day. So you can make mid-course corrections a lot sooner, a lot easier, and pinpoint where you need to make those corrections because you can measure so much more online than we're able to in the traditional business. These metrics actually refer back to that example we looked at a couple of pages ago with that 40,000 heating oil household delivery territory. And that kind of a model in year one, sorry about that, jumping the gun here. We would target that particular type of a company would need to have 480 visits coming to their site every month, that of which 240 of them are unique visitors. Now, the difference between visitors and unique visitors is if I go to a website 5 times in the month, I count as 5 visits, but I'm only 1 unique visitor. With a bounce rate of less than 40%, we actually think now that this can actually be lower than that. A bounce rate, for those of you that may not be familiar with it, a bounce is a visitor that comes to your website, and lands on the page that they land on going into your site. More often than not, it's probably your home page. But they get there and they leave there from that page. They have not interacted with your site at all, and they typically leave very quickly. Those are bounces. The assumption there is that they got to the site, looked at what it wasn't what they were looking for, so they bounced. They left. Bounces are not typically good. So we want to keep that bounce rate under control. And then we want to convert that traffic that comes to the site. And right now, the best knowledge that we have based upon the numbers that we have is that conversion rate actually doesn't need to be all that high. We're looking at a conversion rate of about 15% of those unique visitors that actually wind up registering. So these are the types of numbers that our clients are looking at. Matter of fact, all of this is now automated right on our client's dashboard that they look at every time they log into the site. They can see for the last 30 days what their traffic is, and then they can compare that to their targets to see if they're on track, or they're not. Down here are some other metrics that we regularly look at. Some of them that we already talked about. Cost per customer acquired, I'll mention. That's something that I've consistently watched because, for those of you that have been in the industry for a while, you know that the industry surveys and so forth typically peg a cost per customer acquired for a traditional business, whether it's heating oil or propane, somewhere in the neighborhood between $400 and $600 to acquire a customer. Very expensive customer acquisition process. Online is much, much different than that. Certainly, we would not want to acquire customers for more than $100 per customer. And actually, consistently, we see our clients, and certainly we have done it consistently less than $50 a customer, and with some of our tactics, actually less than $25 per customer. So very efficient customer acquisition. So, looking at the time, we're at the end of our webinar. So in terms of summary here, the results that companies are seeing today with online efforts are certainly worth traveling that road. One of the things that we've asked that generally gets people's attention is, can you acquire 100 customers, 100 new customers in a year? And most companies will say, well, no, I can't, and kind of fighting now to keep the customers I have. Well, with online, you can certainly do that, and we saw those results back on the other page, where in that particular example it was better than 300 customers in the first year, and also. New customers also result in increased gallons, which the industry is having a very difficult time getting increased gallons. We talked about greater fleet efficiency. We talked about improving our operating margins. And certainly when you do that, you have increased operating margins, you have increased gallons, you wind up with more profit, for the company. So with that, I'm going to turn the webinar back to Adrian for comments and also for question and answer if we have them.
Thank you, John. Yeah, actually, we do. We have first question is, what's the next step? So I guess someone is interested in taking the next step. What would you suggest, John?
If somebody's interested in talking with us about online or the energy engine or kind of how it works and so forth, just drop us an email or give us a call. My contact information, Adrian's, is right there on the screen. I think Adrian will also be sending out to you a summary email, after this, and you can just reply to that, if you'd like to know more about online. We don't try and exert pressure on companies to go online. It has to be a conscious decision. You need to be at the point where you're ready to do it. But certainly we'll help guide you through that process and be able to answer your questions. One of the things that we typically do for somebody from this point that might be interested is we just do an online meeting with them, or we might do a face-to-face meeting as well. But what we do in that meeting is provide a demonstration of the engine itself, and also what we call a business system outline and a market assessment. So we actually look at an interested company's individual market and their business, and provide them with essentially projections of what we believe is possible in their market based upon their market and, of course, our experience and our clients' experience. So that's typically the next step, is to spend about an hour or hour and a half with us, combination demonstration and market assessment.
Okay, and the next question kind of falls in line with that, and that is, excuse me, how long does it take? And this time of year, is it a lot of work?
I assume the person that asked that question is referring to how long would it take to kind of get an online business up and running, or set up the website using the Energy Engine platform. If that's not the question that you intended to ask, feel free, or anybody that has any questions, feel free to just open up your GoToMeeting tab on the right-hand side of your screen and just type your question into the chat box at the bottom. But set up. Adrienne and Adrienne's team actually does most of the work, so she's probably the better one to answer that. We've just come out of what's typically one of the busy times of the year in terms of adding clients on the engine. Adrienne, I know, has several that she's actively working through now. But if we have all the information from you, like your business rules, your things like your logo and color and graphics, I mean, we can have your business up and running in about 4 weeks. Normally, it will take longer than that, only because it takes a little bit of time for, oftentimes, for you to, provide us with some of the information and the materials that we need, or we spend time walking through, some of the implications of setting the business rules with you. It just takes a little bit of time for you to think about that. But 4 weeks is doable. Typically, though, between 4 weeks and 8 weeks is what winds up happening for most companies to actually go live. And even when you go live, I mean, we still work with our clients on an ongoing basis. We did a kickoff meeting earlier this week that actually included 3 different meetings, where we did a kickoff meeting with management. Adrienne did a customer care, where she did a system demonstration for their customer care folks, and then they also asked if I would do a kind of some customer care training for them. They were a full-service company only, and now they're adding online on demand. So, how do you handle the what's the price question now? A customer says, hey, what's your price? Before it was just talking about the benefits of full service. Now you're giving the customer choices, so you can, which is actually good for the company, because now you can satisfy the needs of more customers, which is part of what online is all about, being able to service more customers in your market, which is where you get your gallons growth. Hopefully that has that. Hopefully that has that.
Now the other part of that, John, is how much work is it? And you touched on it. I do have a booklet, and I try to make it as easy for new clients as possible. I do all, I certainly ask for your input and get all your rule or your answers to the rules, but I do all the setup, so I try to make it as easy as possible. The next question is, what is our ballpark startup cost?
Good question. Ballpark startup cost. We do things a little bit differently to make it a little bit affordable, especially those of you that are in the industry, and are accustomed to, as we have, bought software over the years. The Energy Engine actually sits, as they would say, on the cloud. So it uses some of the latest technology, which is a huge benefit to you in terms of cost. So it's not a situation where you buy software, you have to maintain that software, you have to buy hardware to put in your back room, you have to have the communications linked to that hardware, and so forth. And then one morning you walk in and the system's down and you have to reboot, or you have to call support, that sort of thing. The engine is set up as a web-based business. So we sit on the cloud. So there's no hardware in your back room. There are no connection fees. There's no annual maintenance fees that you pay. Everything is encompassed in an annual license fee. Most of our clients pay an annual license fee of $5,900, which includes the annual license fee, the usage, the connectivity, all the hardware that we have. It also includes all your support maintenance, which in most cases you spend more just on support and maintenance of existing software that you're using to operate your business than anything. The other important thing is all of our clients get all enhancements and upgrades to the Energy Engine at no additional cost. And those enhancements occur on a frequent basis. and those are just automatically appear for you as part of your system. So it's $5,900 per year for most clients, unless they're doing things like multiple location dispatch, or they're doing propane plus heating oil and plus commercial fuels and so forth. There may be some additional fees. So the break-even point on the engine is actually less than 2 orders per week. So it becomes an extremely profitable way for you to service customers. The only other fee that you have is your initial setup fee, and that, of course, is just one time getting everything going, initially. But like I say, for most customers, it's $5,900 a year.
Okay, good. And John, that was the last question. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you, John, and thank you to our attendees for taking the time for this webinar. As John mentioned, you will be receiving an email from me with instructions on how to request a more personalized demo or how to contact us should you have any questions. And again, thank you, and I hope everyone has a great afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.
Welcome to our Energy Edge webinar, an interview with customer service expert Randy Bussey, author of Turning Rants into Raves. Turn your customers on before they turn on you. This webinar is geared to take approximately 40 minutes, as we know that your time is valuable. Once we have completed, we will open it up to a short Q&A section, so please hold your questions until then, or you can simply type them in on the right side of your screen, and we will address them after the presentation. If you notice on the GoToWebinar menu box that appeared on the right side of your screen, there's 2 different sections. You can actually put into the chat box, or you can put into the question box, and we'll get to them as soon as the webinar is completed. Let me begin by introducing John Vrabel, who will conduct the interview. John is a founding partner and the managing partner of Energy Edge, as well as our resident expert in business development, with a proven track record for building businesses that are rewarded by the marketplace. John?
Thanks, Adrian, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to our latest Energy Edge webinar, one of our coffee break webinar series. So thanks, everyone, for joining this morning, and I would like to introduce to you our guest for this morning, Randy Bussey. Randy, welcome. Welcome back to Energy Edge webinars.
Thanks for inviting me back, John and Adrian. I appreciate it.
For those of you that do not know Randy or have not met Randy before, Randy's a customer care expert. We have known Randy now for several years, and I would guess that most of you that are attending this morning's webinar are somehow associated with the downstream energy marketplace, maybe clients of ours, maybe friends of ours. And Randy certainly serves our industry as well as others, so she has a very direct knowledge of customer care within the downstream energy marketplace, and hopefully we're going to draw on that just a little bit this morning. But before we get started, Randy, I need to ask you a question, because since the last time we talked, of course we know that you have managed customer care groups over the years. You have then applied your talents to customer care training. But now, since we've talked last, you've decided to do something new, and that's to write a book. Tell us a little bit about that. Why'd you take on this new challenge?
Sure. Well, thanks. I appreciate that. I actually co-wrote the book with Carol Hetty, who is the president of Learning and Performance Solutions, which is also a customer service training company located in the Hudson Valley, New York. And it's actually been about 2 years in the making when Carol and I decided that we wanted to, take our knowledge and expertise over the years as we've been working with our customers and clients. We have a combined 50 years of experience in the customer service arena, if you will. And we decided to, put pen to paper and give our take on customer service and what it takes to actually turn rants into raves, and that's how our book was born.
Well, that's helpful, and thank you for sharing, with us a probably pretty close to a final draft, I would guess, of your book. And what I'd like to do this morning is maybe take a look at some of the things that you have said in the book, and have you respond to maybe some questions that I had went through it, if that's okay.
Absolutely. We're an open book here, so you've got questions, and hopefully we'll have answers.
All right, or an open book, so to speak.
That's right.
Well, one of the things that caught my attention was you point out in your book that customer service has evolved into a business strategy, and that it's often the only competitive advantage that a business has. And recognizing that, we're in the downstream energy marketplace, so many of the companies that we work with are companies like oil, propane, commercial fuels companies, HVAC companies, maybe solar companies. You think about the energy that they have, and it's very much a commodity type of a product, so their customers are oftentimes looking at the fuel that they provide is really the same fuel that a competitor might provide. So that your comment about customer service maybe providing the competitive advantage for them really struck home with me. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And as you alluded to, the people that are listening to the webinar are in a commoditized marketplace. And so what I could get from you, I could get from, 10, 20, or 100 other different companies. And so what is going to make me buy from you? And, the correct answer is not price, right? We don't want to necessarily compete on price because there's always going to be somebody that could undercut your price and, take the customer from you. And so the customer experience that you provide to your customers is often the only thing that you have that can differentiate yourself. And one of the statistics that we shared in the book, actually it's on page 1, is that there was a survey that was done by Forrester Research. They do a lot of work in the customer service area, the State of the Customer Experience 2012 report. And of all the companies that were surveyed, 93% actually identified the customer experience among their strategic priorities, and 28% of them actually put it on the top of their list. So companies know that they've got to find a way to stand apart from their competitors, and customer service is no longer just a department.
Very well said. And many of the companies that we work with also, certainly try to separate themselves from their competition by providing good service, because many of them realize that, ultimately it's the service that keeps the customer there, makes the customer loyal. One of the other things you talk about in the book is customer centricity, and I ran across a quote that actually came from a guy that I know you know, and I also know in the industry. His name is Chris Westhead, and Chris is president of Morania Oil in Nassau County on Long Island. And it's a little bit of a long quote that was, I assume that Chris probably read one of the early drafts of your book. But I'd like to just take a second to read it to our attendees, because I think it speaks very specifically to what you just mentioned, and to our industry directly as well. Chris writes, "Read the words, lessons, and amusing stories contained in this engaging volume. Find yourself captured by this entertaining and extremely interesting book. You will view the anecdotal stories as both enjoyable and scary at the same time. You may at first find yourself taking in the various accounts and examples as though you were a window shopper gazing into the business lives of others with interest. It will be as though you are taking a critical look into someone else's enterprise, asking why any owner or manager would permit some of these scary rants to work in their organization. Then it hits you. you suddenly realize that so many of these tragedies are actually happening right in your own company. Turning rants into raves hits a home run by taking you on a journey through real-life examples showing how the folks that you pay to attract and engage your valuable prospects and customers are actually chasing them away. It then does a very effective job of showing the reader how employees who are empowered, have clear expectations, and truly think like owners will actually turn on your customers. This informative digest should be required reading for anyone dealing with customers, both external as well as internal. Now, I know Chris, and that comes as very high praise from a very critical and passionate manager in this field. So it seems like the book really struck a chord with Chris as well. Would you like to add anything to that, Randy?
Just a disclaimer that I didn't pay him any money to write that, but after I did share the draft with him, that's what he came back to us with. And Chris is a client as well, and so I've done some work in his organization, and we were glad to hear that the message that we're trying to deliver, while there is some humor in the book, where we kind of poke fun at some sad customer service experiences, the real fact is that some of these experiences are going on within your own companies. So, it's funny when you point to somebody else and say, geez, how could they let that happen? And then when you realize, oh my goodness, that's actually happening in my business, that's when, we really knew we were onto something.
Well, and just to segue from that comment, when you're working with companies, what do you typically find? I mean, you talk about Chris's company and some of that experience, but are most companies taking good care of their customers? And if they're not, why not?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think all you need to do is go online and start reading reviews of some companies, and you'll see that there's a lot of people that are actually ranting about the experiences that they're having with companies. And so, why aren't people taking better care of customers? I think, for most of the people that may be listening in on this webinar, they may be business owners or managers of their organizations. And so as owners, leaders, managers, we know that taking care of the customer needs to be priority number one, because without the customer, obviously, we have no business. But those people have what I like to call an owner mindset. Right? You don't have to be the owner to be thinking and acting like an owner. But unfortunately, not all of the people representing your company are thinking and acting like owners of the business. And, the slide that's up right now, who is taking care of your customers, if you advance the slide just one, I think, I'd like to tell you who's actually taking care of your customers. Now, the woman on the left, her name is Rant. And you can tell by her body language that she doesn't look too happy, contrasted with the lovely young lady on the right-hand side, Rave, who, she's got a smile on her face. She's ready to rock and help your customers. And so anybody who's listening to this webinar has employees like Rant that are working in their organization, and hopefully they've got more employees that are like Rave, taking care of customers. And so what we wind up doing within the book is we show you things from Rant's perspective and what happens when Rant takes care of your customers. And then we show you the same scenarios when Rave is taking care of them, and how much of a different impression customers have of not only the employee taking care of them, but your company as a whole.
Well, that's probably true of most organizations that you encounter, I would suspect. And thinking back to Chris's quote, talking about scary experiences, one of the things that you also point out in the book that I'd like you to comment a little bit about as well is that the average business will never hear a word from 96% of their unhappy customers. Now, when I first saw that, I thought, wow, you do the math on that, and that's 1 in 25 customers, only 1 in 25 that have complaints that you're going to hear from. And then you went on in the book to point out that those unhappy customers tell another 10 or 15 about their bad experience. I mean, you really wind up very quickly having this multiplication effect of bad customer service. I mean, that's pretty scary.
Yeah, it is. Word of mouth years ago was, I tell a friend who tells a friend, and then by the end of the weekend, the whole neighborhood knows not to do business with a company. But social media has changed the landscape, and word of mouth is actually now on steroids with social media. And so, I can tell one person, and in seconds, all of the people that are following me on Twitter might hear about it. Anybody that's Googling a company and looking a review up is going to see my negative rant about the company. So it's not just one customer having a bad experience. It's almost like everybody else gets to live through that bad experience that the one customer had with your company.
Yeah, and those experiences, come in a number of different forms. The slide that I just put up on the screen, is one of them that you use, and it's a little interchange between a customer and, in this case, Rand, who does not handle a very difficult call that should be handled, I would think, with a whole lot of empathy. Does not handle it very well. I'm wondering, for the audience, if you could, maybe just kind of take us through maybe what Rand did in this case, but maybe what Rave would have done, or maybe a better way to handle this, just as an example, so we can get a little bit more of a feel about what you're talking about as far as good customer service and bad customer service.
Sure. Well, reading from a script obviously is not the way to go. And I think being present in the conversation and really listening to what the customer said. So here's a customer that, happened to be calling to disconnect their father's phone, whether it's their phone, their oil account, it doesn't matter what it is. They're calling because they just had a tragedy, they lost a family member, and they're calling to disconnect. And Rant is just interested in, what's the phone number, what's the account number, let me just take care of this, rather than, acknowledging what the customer said by saying something like, I'm so sorry to hear about your loss, I'll be happy to take care of this for you as quickly as possible. And so responding appropriately is really key, and showing empathy when appropriate. And so if you're not really in the conversation with the customer, and this is just, call number 18 of the day, you're going to just go through the motions and not respond appropriately to the customer. Now, in this case, the customer was calling to, cancel an account, but that doesn't mean that, she doesn't have an account. It doesn't mean that she doesn't have friends that, would be looking for a new company. And so we want to make sure that anytime we're dealing with a customer or a representative of the customer, that we're treating them in a way that's going to inspire them to rave about the experience and, in the end, your company.
Well, I think that's the key, to me anyway. You want to get those raves, obviously. Kind of picking up on that, one of the other things that you talk about is how customers are influenced, or can be very influential, or can be very influenced by other customers' comments. And certainly I look at reviews online of companies or products. Tell us a little bit more about this ripple effect that you talk about as far as customers' influence.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of us, the first thing that we do when we are looking for a company, whether it's, a plumber or, a new oil company or anything else that we, are buying, goods or services, we'll ask the people in our sphere of influence, hey, do you know a good plumber? What oil company are you using? Who do you use for your propane? And, we will listen very intently to the opinions and recommendations of the people that are closest to us, you know, our friends, our family, our colleagues, people that we know, like, trust, and respect. And if they make a recommendation, you know, chances are we're going to wind up going with that company, because I'd much rather, you know, choose a company based on somebody else's suggestion rather than just doing eeny, meeny, miny, mo and, you know, picking somebody out of the yellow pages or the internet. And so we do rely on the people that we know for their recommendations and suggestions, but when we don't have access to that, for instance, let's say somebody just recently moved to a new area, they don't know a soul there, and so it's time for them to, you know, connect their oil or their gas, and they don't know, you know, they don't know anybody that they could ask to say, hey, who are you using? And so they are going to go online, and they're going to Google, you know, oil companies in their area, and they're going to see some companies, and they're going to see reviews, and they are then going to probably make, at least not, maybe not their buying decision, but certainly their decision of which company they're going to call and which company they're not going to call based on total strangers' comments. And so look at how powerful customers are in influencing other customers to use your brand. It's tremendous.
Yeah, that's great, Randy. And you know, so I guess we kind of you know, we kind of set up what the, you know, what the problem and maybe what the opportunities are here. And one of the things that you do in the book is you build it around, and you build 5 of the chapters around 5 principles of how to turn rants into raves. So one of the things I'd like to hopefully do with our attendees today, since we promised them that they'd be able to walk away from this webinar with some useful information that they could put into practice immediately, is maybe take our remaining time during this session and maybe have you spend you know, just a minute or so on each one of the 5 principles, maybe providing some useful information that our attendees can put into practice. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the next slide is actually going to get right into them. And so the first principle, John, is think like an owner. And as I alluded to earlier, you don't have to be the owner to be thinking and acting like an owner. And so if you're thinking like an owner, you're making decisions, solving problems, and doing what's right for customers as if you were the owner of a company. Because the owner of a company is going to take responsibility for the customers. They're going to do whatever it takes to make sure the customer is happy, making the customer a priority, and resolving whatever their problems are, even if they weren't the ones that caused them themselves. And so, you know, the takeaway for this would be is empower your employees to make decisions that you would make as the owner of the company to ensure that the customers are being taken care of in the manner that you would take care of them yourself, because you can't take care of all the customers, you know, and do everything else. So when we have representatives in our organization that are responsible for taking care of customers, we need to make sure that they have the knowledge, the tools, and the power to act as if they're the owner of the company. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I'm thinking back to Chris's quote about the, you know, the power of really empowering your employees with and setting clear expectations, you know, for them. So yeah, that makes sense to me. Your second principle is to build a relationship. How do you go about doing that?
Right. Well, you know, there's an old saying, you know, people do business with people they know, like, and trust. And, you know, to that, we want to establish rapport, demonstrate you care, and show genuine interest in your customers and their needs. And, you know, how you would do that is by, you know, acknowledging customers, certainly, you know, getting and using their name throughout a conversation is important. You know, remembering customers if you've spoken with them in the past, you know, trying to remember certain things about the conversation that you had with them the last time to make them feel as if They're not just a number to your company. Certainly you want to thank the customers for their business because they do have choices and they don't have to do business with you, but when they choose to do business with you, you want to make sure that they know that you appreciate the fact that you're doing so.
Makes perfect sense, and I guess a lot of times it seems so easy to get good customer service. If you just kind of follow the golden rule, do unto others.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. So, one of the other things that you talk about is removing the roadblocks. Does that kind of make it easy to do business with you, or what do you mean by removing the roadblocks?
That's exactly what it means. We need to eliminate the obstacles that get in the customer's way of doing business with us. And, it's got to be easy for customers to reach you, to find your phone number, to contact you. When they call you, are they, being put in a queue and left on hold for 20 minutes? We've got to see what we could do so that when the customer does contact us, it's easy, and then when they need something from us, we don't make them do all of the work, that we need to jump through the hoops for them. It means being proactive and anticipating what future questions are going to be, rather than waiting for the customer to either ask or potentially have a problem. So it's really kind of being one step ahead, and we don't know what the roadblocks might be unless we actually walk in the customer's shoes, which is the next principle, walk in your customer's shoes. And when we talk about that, we need to think about the customer, what he wants, how he wants to be treated, and that kind of ties back into the golden rule, right? We need to understand what customers experience when they deal with us. Again, how easy is it for them to contact us? What are they experiencing if they're just buying a new house? What are some of the concerns that they might have? And so if we could educate them and tell them things ahead of time, we could save them a lot of aggravation, and that's going to make them really think very highly about us, which kind of takes me into the last principle, which is capture your customer's heart. And that's really what we're trying to do. That's really getting your customers to rave about you. And how we do that is by creating an emotional connection with your customer that makes them, feel special and appreciated. And it's personalizing their experience. It's going above and beyond what they expect and really being genuinely interested. Think about if you have a customer that you talk to on a regular basis and they mention to you that they're going, out of town on a cruise, and then you speak with them again in a couple of weeks. Imagine if you say to them, hey, John, how was that cruise that you went on with your family? Well, that customer is going to feel pretty good that you remembered that, you were going on this cruise and that you actually took the time to ask about it. And so if we could find a way to connect with our customers that they're in love with our company and they're raving about us. They're not even waiting for people to say, hey, do you know a good oil or propane company? They're going about just talking about them because they can't believe how well they're treated by the company that they do business with.
Yeah, that's that happens so often. As I'm listening to you and I'm talking about, I hear you talking about, having employees, act like an owner, and treat the customer and walk in their shoes and so forth. I'm wondering if there's, what the owner of the business, or maybe it's the manager of the business, have to do in order to make all of this work. Because one of the things that you talk about, is employees often feel that they have their hand tied. So I guess there's really more than just employees wanting to do the right thing and maybe following some of the guidelines or the principles that you've just given us. And there's really some active involvement that's necessary on the part of the owner or the manager as well.
Absolutely. And, one of my favorite sayings, I'm sure you've heard me say it before, is the fish stinks from the head down. And so how the owner, manager, leader is treating the employees is going to have a direct impact on how the employees ultimately treat the customers. And so it's important that the leaders of the business are connecting with their employees, making them feel valued and important, and giving them the power that they need in order to take care of the customers. And so when we talk about, the roadblocks, if there's policies and procedures that are not customer friendly, well, how could you possibly get your customers to be raving about you? And so, one of the images that we have in the book is a mirror. And we talk a lot about look in the mirror and take a look at what it is you're doing as a leader, how you're treating your employees, and are you walking the talk when it comes to not only how you're taking care of the employees, but also how you're taking care of the customers yourself. Because if you're a business owner and you get off the phone with a customer who maybe was ranting because they weren't happy, and you start then ranting about the customer, saying, I can't believe that customer, what a pain in the neck she is. Well, you know what? What message are you sending to your employees if you're talking trash about your customers? So as leaders and managers, we need to be making sure that we are demonstrating and modeling the behavior that we want our employees to do when they're talking to our customers.
The fish stinks from the head down. I wrote that down. Every time you say that, I write that down.
It's pretty powerful. And, a lot of business owners, I don't mean to insult anybody who might be listening, but sometimes you're part of the problem. And you need to take a look at what you're doing and what you're saying to see if you're leading the proper way.
Yeah, and I would imagine that you run across, clients that you work with where, maybe sometimes that's difficult to communicate to the boss, or maybe for them to kind of realize that they're part of the problem. Is that true?
Yes, it is, and I won't name names, so don't worry. But I think that if you're willing to make an investment, if you recognize in your organization that customer service is lacking, and you're willing to make an investment both of time and money to correct the problem and improve customer service, you as the leader need to be willing to look at your actions as well and expose your areas of opportunity to your employees, to say something like, that's a problem for me. I sometimes don't let the customer talk, or I interrupt them, or I'm not always empathetic. And when you can share that you've got challenges yourself, I think it makes employees feel better, and they realize that, you as the leader are not saying, oh, you guys stink, you got to get better. But when you can acknowledge that you need help also, and this is going to help all of us change the way we're taking care of customers, I think then you can really get the buy-in of your employees, and it'll be easier for them to start demonstrating some of the behaviors that we have listed in the book.
Well, one of the reasons why we like you joining us, periodically, and appreciate your time in doing so, is with the companies that we work with, we more frequently than not, have owners say to us, hey, I need to have somebody come in to the company to do some customer service training, and we have this problem or that problem. But I guess when you go into a company, you're really doing two training. Yeah, you're training the employees, which is what the boss recognized that was needed. But I guess in a lot of cases, you're also training the boss too.
Yep, and what we do actually is we leave the leadership of the company with coaching skills that they could use going forward into the future. Because, training is not a one-time event, John. You can't just train somebody and think that they're going to get it and do the right thing and say the right thing with the customers. And so constant reinforcement of the behaviors is needed. And so we give the leaders the coaching skills so that they could have coaching conversations with the employees and, encourage them to change their behaviors. And, we probably spoke the last time about recorded phone calls, and I'm a huge fan of using recorded phone calls for training and coaching purposes. And so I'm happy to, share some resources, offline with anybody that's interested in recording their phone calls and how valuable that could be.
Well, and that's, as we move toward the end of today's webinar, I knew that in the past you had made offers to any of the attendees if they were interested, and we're kind of up to the challenge to, invite you to maybe do some mystery calls into their company and then kind of share with them, some observations or some of the results of some of those mystery calls. So is that what you refer to?
Yes, and you use the word if they're interested in, having me make a mystery call, and I'm going to say, are they brave enough to have me make a mystery call? Because you know what? You never know what's being said. Unless you're monitoring all of your phone calls, you don't know how your phone is being answered. And wouldn't you rather find out from me that maybe there's some areas of opportunity rather than finding out from a former customer that the way they were treated on the phone is one of the reasons why they left? So I will make the offer of a complimentary test call or mystery call into anybody's company that's interested. And what I'll do is I'll record the phone call, I'll send you the recording, and then I'll actually go through it with you and make some recommendations on how the call could be improved. And in a minute, don't change the slide yet, but in a minute you'll have my email address, and you can sign up for the test call on, via email, or certainly you can call me. But I do want to let you know that I'd like to offer anybody who is listening, as a thank you to you, John, for spending the time to, speak with me. I'd like to offer a discount to anyone for $5 off the book. And the URL that you have up on the slide right now is where you can buy the book. And unfortunately, the book is not available today. It will be available in about a week. So really, you'll be among the first to get your hands on a copy of this book. And when you do, please use that code for a $5 discount.
Well, and thanks, Randy, for making that offer available to our attendees today. And I'll put your contact information up here also before we wrap up. But I suspect that Adrienne, as she typically does behind all of our webinars, will be sending out a thank you to all of our attendees for attending. And I think if you just want to reply to that email to Adrienne, she'd be glad to also get any information back to you, Randy, for any of the companies that would be, as you say, brave enough to take your offer to record some calls and then review those with them. So before we wrap up today, I'd certainly like to again thank you for taking your time, to share some of the work that you're doing with some of the companies that we work with as well. And we do have your contact information up on the screen for any of the attendees that either want to contact you by email or by phone. And just to invite you to close out with any final comments that you may have for us, Randy.
Yep, absolutely. And first, thanks very much to John and Adrienne for inviting me to come in and speak to your audience. Customer service is something that I'm really passionate about. It's near and dear to my heart. And I'm a customer too. And, in a selfish way, my co-author Carol and I wrote this book because we want to be treated better by the companies that do business, that we do business with. And so, if you ask yourself, are you delivering experiences that inspire your customers to rave about your company. I'll leave you with this. After you read this book and implement the 5 principles in your organization, your answer will be yes.
Well, Randy, thank you very much again for your time. One other comment for our attendees is I believe Adrian is also recording this interview, so that will be available on our website. Again, thinking back to Chris's quote and his comment that the book should be required reading for any of the employees dealing with their customers. You know, maybe one of the starting points also for our attendees might be to make this this interview available to them that they can just listen to in a quick 40 minutes or so. So, Randy, again, our thanks to you, and I'll go ahead and turn this back to Adrian for any closing comments or any administrative details.
Well, thank you, John, and once again, I think you've covered everything I need to say. But Randy, if you have an extra few minutes, we do have a few questions.
Absolutely.
So are you game?
Sure, always.
Okay. What do you do if you realize that most of your employees act more like rant than rave?
Well, you don't necessarily have to go put an ad in the newspaper to replace the staff. So that's the good news. You know, the sad fact is that a lot of companies do have employees like rant working for them. And, you know, they've probably been working there for many, many years. So you don't have to get rid of all of your employees. But what you have to do is you, again, have to model the behavior that you want them to demonstrate. You need to educate them on how you want the customers to be treated, and you have to empower them to be able to take care of the customers in the way that you want them to be treated. So it's about having conversations with them, and as John suggested, you know, certainly the book is a great starting point.
Okay, good. Can you comment more on the fine line between scripts on computers and being careful to not really use them?
Yeah, you know, scripts, I'm not a big fan of scripts. I'm a big fan of suggested verbiage. We don't want to have people reading from a script because that never sounds genuine, and it leads to responding inappropriately at times. And I think that if we look at the principle of walk in your customer's shoes, which is principle number 4 in the book, you know, put yourself in the customer's shoes, and how would you want to be treated or spoken to if you were the customer? And so we need to ensure that the people that we have taking care of our customers have the right mindset. Not only do they need the skills, but they also need to have the heart and the passion to want to take care of customers in such a way that inspires them to rave. So it's educating your employees on what you expect.
Is it hard to get your employees to buy into these principles?
I don't think it is, again, as long as you're walking the talk. You can't, you know, say do this, but then you do something else. And so sometimes you do have to make decisions that maybe you don't have the right people on the bus, but I wouldn't be so quick to, you know, get rid of employees before trying to turn them from rants into raves. And, you know, when you just look at the title of the book for a second, Turning Rants into Raves, you know, we're talking about your customers' rants into your customers' raves. But we're also talking about turning your employees like rants into employees that are more like raves. So this book will show you how to do that.
Interesting question, Randy. Does customer service really matter all that much? Aren't most customers just shopping for the lowest price?
Oh, boy. You know, I think we think they are. But you know what? Study after study has shown that customers are willing to pay more for a good experience. And so I will say to you that, yes, price is a factor, it's a factor. Obviously, if you're charging $1 more a gallon for oil than somebody else is, you're probably going to have a hard time selling me on it, even if your service is fabulous. But I think that customer service is often the only differentiator, and the customer experience starts with hello. And how you are answering the telephone is going to set the tone for whether that customer decides to buy from you or hang up and call your competitor. So if you're answering the phone and saying, you know, oil company, I'm not going to be inspired to stay on the phone and stick around to hear anything more than what the price of oil is. So yes, the customer service is really important. And if it wasn't, I wouldn't have a business, right?
Absolutely. Let's go back to the fish stinks from the head down. What do I do if I'm the problem? In other words, the owner or the manager. If they're the actual problem, what do they do?
Right. Well, you know what? Congratulations, first off, for acknowledging that you are the problem. Second step is get a copy of this book, because this book is going to give you a roadmap of what you need to do in order to lead from a place that you want your employees to follow. And, you know, again, it's really looking at what you're doing, what you're saying, how you're treating employees, how you're treating customers, that's going to have an impact on what your employees actually do. So it's okay if you're part of the problem, but now do something about it.
Very good. Okay, that was the last of the questions. So I'd like to thank you, John, for conducting the interview. And Randy, it's always a pleasure listening. So thank you to you and to our attendees for taking the time for this webinar. As John previously mentioned, I will be sending out a thank you, if you will, for attending the webinar. And you can feel free to send any questions that you may have that haven't been answered back to us. And I will either see that Randy gets it, or we'll handle it from there. Also, like John mentioned, we did record the webinar, so if you're interested in that, you can ask for that as well. So expect the email shortly. And again, thank you, everyone, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day. And if you're on the East Coast, please be mindful of the impending storm.
Thanks, Adrienne.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.